just like to welcome to the stage Matteo Novati from BSI, British Standards Institute, and Brian Robinson, who you're now independent, are you, Brian?
Always have been. Well, at least for the last 10 years, haven't you?
Excuse me. And Novati, over to you to talk about the standards aspects of the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Alan. My name is Matteo Novati. I'm the program lead for our zero emission HGV infrastructure standards program. So I work in BSI, and my focus is around all the standards that we look after around sort of road transportation. So just to give you a brief overview of the program, we started working on this program last year with three key objectives in mind. One, to engage with the industry to understand what are the key barriers and challenges that the industry is facing. The second one, to signpost to existing standards where possible. Obviously, Brian showed quite a few of the existing standard landscape, both internationally and nationally, that are available to our stakeholders, and also learn from the trials and the deployment to convene an harmonized approach on some of those areas that perhaps are not yet standardized but could be standardized in the future. In September last year, we delivered a prioritization report that is available online that summarizes all the engagement that we've done with the industry. Those are the sort of steps that we followed, and identifies all the areas where perhaps standards may come and support the work of the demonstration and of anyone who would look to scale up and commercialize zero-emission HGVs in the future towards deployment. After the prioritization, we then moved on to developing standards in some of the key areas that came out of that work. And I'll leave the floor to Brian later on to talk about the first one, that is the one that is sort of at the most advanced stage for the time being, which looks at charging sites for HGVs. But we've also started working on a second one a few months back, which looks at workshops and covers all the protocols and facilities for inspection and maintenance of battery electric and hydrogen fuel HGVs, so both technologies. We started the drafting process. We're rounding up experts from the industry to contribute. We've appointed a technical author to sort of convene the opinion and the practice from the industry and develop the document. And this standard, the second standard, I won't focus on the first one because I want Brian to then cover that, but the second one is going to be targeted at sort of both fleet operators and operational engineers. It will look at the risks that they have to face during inspections, so how to assess those, how to plan for emergencies. We look at training. We've talked, Isabella talked about skills earlier. One of the things that we are going to look at is what sort of training is needed for those that will be undertake this inspection and maintenance. And also we'll be looking at what sort of protocols will need to be put in place. There are also two other further focus areas that we will be looking at in the future. So we've not started on these yet, but they are sort of coming quickly in our pipeline. One is a third standard. So the first one is focused on charging and sort of the battery electric side. The second one sort of is a balance of both. The third one will focus on the hydrogen and the sort of hydrogen fuel cell vehicle technology, and we look at mobile and temporary sites. Obviously, it is very likely that at least in a sort of preliminary stage during the demonstration, some of the refueling stations will be mobile or temporary stations. So we want to help with some good practice, and so a sort of flex standard that will cover these elements, which also has a good potential to become then a standard that gets sort of socialized at a more international level and included in any of the more in any future ISO standardization. So we're working with our BSI committees in parallel to develop some thinking in the UK on that. And on the side, we're also looking not necessarily for sort of a short-term standardization, but we're also looking at sort of the implications of electrification on tractors and trailers, interoperability and connectivity. So at present, there are no standards that look at how e-trailers and e-tractors connect. There is practice that is being adopted by some of the OEMs. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to engage with them, understand what they are doing right now, and how perhaps in the future standardization will come into this topic. And this is done, as I said, through a sort of an engagement exercise with the OEMs and with other specialists, fleet operators, conversion specialists, but also through a review of what are the existing standards and what can be adapted from the existing ones. So a lot happening as part of this program. In terms of next steps, as I said, watch this space. We're publishing the first standard, the one that Brian is going to talk about, in May. And this third one on mobile refueling station, we have a scoping workshop to start the work next Monday on the 25th of March. So if you're interested in taking part and bringing your ideas to the table for that one, do get in touch and we'll invite you to the workshop. I'll leave to Brian describe about the first standard.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Matteo, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, you can see the screen better than I can because mine's a little tiny thing. But so the first standard, the 2071, currently being drafted, builds on mostly some of the topics that were raised in the standard and the prioritisation report that Matteo just mentioned, and all the stakeholder engagement and input that went into that to identify some of the areas that the community, picking up on Brian's earlier point, anticipated were likely to be topics relevant to developing and guiding installers and planners of these sites to be kind of safe, efficient, effective. And I want to emphasise that's part of the issues that we're going through in the drafting. We don't just want a safe and effective charging experience. I don't know how many of you drive electric cars. I've been driving an electric car for a few years now, across Europe and across the UK. And it's not just about whether I turn up to a charge point and when I plug my car in, it works and charges at reasonable speed. That doesn't define whether I've had a good charging experience or not. It is also about the welfare facilities on site and how easy it was to find the charger in the first place. These sorts of other parameters that we're factoring in without losing the main focus, which is the operational safety of publicly accessible charging sites for electric HGVs. And again, also picking out on Brian's anticipation point earlier, which I think is very valid, these sites don't yet exist. There are a few truck charging sites coming into play around Europe, in Holland, in Norway, in Sweden, and the first ones in the UK are going to be probably later this year. But we don't have that experience that we do in the car world, certainly, of knowing what's a good charge site, what's not so good charge site, which one would you want to go to again, and which one would you think, no, I'm not going to go there again unless I really, really have to. So we're trying to anticipate. We're learning what we can from the car sector and to some extent the van sector for HGVs, but clearly it's not going to be the same. An HGV stopped to charge is not the same, certainly from a commercial and business point of view, as me driving my car across Europe to Spain or whatever, where I can take a 20-minute coffee break. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It's not business critical. Whether I'm there for 20 minutes or half an hour, who cares? I certainly don't. So we need to get that kind of balance right of anticipating what's going to be there, working with the ZHID trials and the people who are going to be putting in this infrastructure over the course of the next 12 months or so, because obviously we don't want our code of practice to contradict what they're actually doing. So kind of working with them, a little bit chicken and egg, to use that analogy again, of what they can do, what they can't do, what we'd like them to do really, what the wider community would like them to do, but they just can't because particularly space constraints. One of the projects, particularly the GridServe-led one, is going to be using existing motorway service area sites. These are highly space constrained areas. What they'd like to do and what they can actually do at any particular site may not be the same thing. So we've got to kind of flex, to use the term of the code of practice, around that and recognise those constraints. So as Matteo said, next phase is to develop a draft. We've got an advisory group that are helping that. Some of the people in the room may be involved in that. And the next stage then is to go to public consultation, hopefully in a month or two's time. That's it from me, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So we've got 11 minutes for questions. We've got a few coming in already, which is great, but keep them coming. So this is a good one. Battery fires are causing some to lose confidence in electric HGV safety and viability. What would you say to them?
Well, I need to delve into the detail because a lot of what people think are battery fires aren't. That's certainly an experience I've come across in the bus world lately, that it's a battery electric vehicle, yes. It catches fire. It's not necessarily because it's the battery that's caught fire. It's got heating systems, it's got other things that go wrong, in the same way as it's not just the petrol or the diesel in a combustion engine vehicle that catches fire. Other components can overheat and catch fire. The other point I'd make, of course, is that in general, battery technology is evolving very fast. And there are various drivers for that evolution in technology. One clearly is cost, another one is weight, another one is sort of cycle life and longevity and duration, another one is charging speed, and another one is safety, kind of the minimising the propensity for thermal runaways, i.e. a battery fire. And that trend has already largely impacted the HGV community because most of the battery electric HGVs on the market now, and we're in the very early foothills of the transition to electric HGVs, are LFP, so lithium iron phosphate chemistries, which are not anywhere near as prone to battery fires as the earlier nickel manganese cobalt technologies, which were prevalent and are still commonly used in the car world. Even those very, very rarely catch fire. So this is still an enormously rare event, much rarer than any combustion engine vehicle technology. The issue with battery fires when they do occur is that they're much more difficult to put out. That's where they become a bit more of a safety concern. It's not that they're more likely to happen, it's when they do happen, you've got plenty of time to get away and kind of vacate the area safely. It's the fire brigade's headache to put the bloody things out is where we get the problem. But as I say, LFP and technologies that evolve from that, less of a problem. So I would not use the battery fire excuse as a reason not to go for a battery electric HGV. I don't think it's a valid risk.
Thank you. And other Brian, I'm sure you've got things to say on that, but I'm going to stop you, unfortunately, because we've got so many questions to get through here. I'll come to you, Matteo. First of all, there was a question around in what ways can standards foster innovation in the zero-emission HGV sector without stifling creativity and technological advancement?
Well, I think probably the best answer to that is that we've developed this new way of writing standards, which we're calling BSI Flex standards, which is an iterative process that involves the industry in the development of standards. So this program is one of the early applications of this tool. The way it works is we have a technical author, Brian in this case, who sort of takes the lead in developing the document, but with him and sort of accompanying him throughout the journey of developing the standard, there is an advisory group made up of experts that we sort of select to be a cross-sectional representation of the industry, and they sort of contribute and provide guidance that comes from their experience as well as from sort of all the thinking that has already been done sort of aside from the standard development. And once the standard is out for public consultation, it's a freely accessible standard. It then sort of gets picked back up by the technical author who can sort of take on everything that comes back in terms of comments during consultation before sort of updating it into a version 2. So any innovative element that comes throughout the sort of the testing and trialing of new technologies and new solutions gets sort of absorbed in the standard development in stages, and we sort of in our vision the standard becomes stable and becomes a national standard perhaps or an ISO standard only when that stability has been reached and all the sort of the innovation has been captured.
Yeah, brilliant. And Brian, I'll come to you on this one first. Is there any scope for charging mechanisms based on on-site replacement of, it says here, charged fuel cells, but I assume that means either fuel cells or battery swap, i.e. a 5-minute job?
A 5-minute job. If we think about hydrogen, so I was looking at some times to say deliver a tube trailer, and because to try and get hydrogen quickly into a vehicle is there's lots of standards now, and we can do it quite quickly. What you can't do quite so quickly is actually deliver the hydrogen to the site. So the quickest way to do it is to take away a set of tube trailers and bring another set in. But the sort of agreed timing for that is about 45 minutes. So it's not 5 minutes. It's not 5 minutes. I reviewed a patent recently. I think it was in China where they were looking to do battery swaps in buses. And it looked like quite a reasonable system, that the bus stopped at a terminus, and then there was some mechanism which came up from under the floor and took the battery out, put the new battery in, and it was ready to go again. But again, it wasn't 5 minutes. You know, it does take a while to do it. And then you've still got to have all the associated infrastructure to go and bring the replacement batteries in, take them away again, get them charged up. So, you know, it's something I think it's worth watching in China to see how it goes, but it's not something I think I wouldn't want it to take resources away from what we're really focused on, and that's trying to get the batteries charged quickly. So as I said before, I think the 1 megawatt charging is the game changer, and will decide which way the industry goes. So I would like to see us focus on, you know, trying to do that safely. And if you can get a megawatt in during the driver's lunch break, he can do his afternoon shift and get back to his depot where he can be trickle charged overnight. And it really does change the game. So if we can't do that, then I think then battery swapping might be something which would be worth looking at then.
May I ask a really quick, I think it's
Yeah.
a quick one.
Can we just get the microphone to you for those listening? Sorry. I'll just come to you 1 second while the microphone's coming over. Just, Brian, if you want to come in on that. Or
Yeah,
any innovative business models that you're aware of. That's similar to
Yeah, so I mean, the whole issue of refueling stroke recharging time, I think, is really fascinating. And I think that the danger is that we go down a mindset that is completely predetermined by our experience of diesel trucks. And we just kind of, we have to do that. We do that with diesel trucks, therefore we have to do it with electric or hydrogen. And I think there's a wider opportunity around, well, actually, how can we do it better because of the nature of technology and because of the nature of drivers' breaks and drivers' welfare and all that kind of stuff. The other key point, I think, when it comes to refueling, supposedly the penalty of refueling an electric truck, is that for the vast majority of trucks that will be back to base, it'll be like in my family. I have 3 cars, all 3 electric. I drive quite long distances in my one, so I have to stop and charge on the go a reasonable amount when I'm doing a long trip. My wife and my son never have to publicly charge. They do all their charging at home for their daily commutes, their shopping, their trips to the gym, all that kind of stuff. Which means they spend precisely, well, it's not no time at all, but it will be in minutes per year charging their vehicle, because all they have to do is plug it in when they get home once a week and unplug it the next morning. It takes no time at all, and the vast majority of back-to-base HGVs will be the same. You won't have to stop at all to charge them up. So that benefit, if you're a big fleet that's got back to base and long haul trucks, you've got to kind of weigh up the equation. Yes, there's a time penalty for people to plug in the long haul stuff, but you'll be saving a huge amount of time on all the back to base stuff, because they won't need to stop to fill up with diesel or hydrogen or anything else. They just plug it in and walk off, go home or go and do something more useful. So, I think we need a more rounded debate about the time penalty, allegedly, with charging. But yes, to pick up on your question, Alan, in particular, it's not just battery swapping. Electric road systems, of course, are the ultimate example of never having to stop to charge at all. We do need to keep that on the table as an option. And things like Pony Express, the idea of just swapping the tractor unit, for example, and keep the load moving. You don't need the driver may need to sleep for 10 or 12 hours on occasions. The load doesn't, and the vehicle doesn't. So the idea that we have one vehicle, one tractor unit that has to do the whole journey, I'm not sure that's right either. We don't have to do it that way.
I'd just like to thank gentlemen here for their contributions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. And moving on to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.